Nightmares Come True by Jerry Eckhart, copyright 1979. As I write this, it is a warm, pleasant April night. The stars are shining brightly and a soft, gentle wind is blowing. I find it so hard to believe that less than 5 days ago the night was a screaming, wailing monster of a nature run wild. It is still so very difficult to feature that on the night of April 10th, 1979, people were hurt, in pain, and some dying, less than a mile from my home. I can hardly accept the fact that my family was huddled in a shelter, praying their lives be spared, or that my oldest son was scrambling in a muddy culvert trying to wedge his young body inside away from the fury of the storm. It seems unreal that I was a good 10 miles away, unable to help or comfort. I had to force myself to concentrate on warning others of the approaching tornado while my dear ones were caught in the middle. One of my two professions is that of weather service specialist for the National Weather Service. As such, it was my lot to be on duty the day the massive tornado ravaged the city of Wichita Falls, Texas. I can't say that the day began as a normal one, for it did not. When I arrived at work that morning, only a quick look at the weather charts was all I needed to convince myself and the other forecasters that conditions were favorable for a severe weather outbreak in our area. A large mass of warm, moist, unstable air was flowing north into our area from the Gulf of Mexico, while cool, dry air was approaching from the northwest. These colliding air masses set the stage for the most rapid outbreak of severe weather throughout North Texas and southern Oklahoma. By 1:30 that afternoon, the National Severe Storms Laboratory in Kansas City had issued a tornado watch for the Wichita Falls area and its surrounding counties. In less than 3 hours, severe thunderstorms with large hail and damaging winds began to occur. Tornadoes broke out shortly thereafter. The first struck the city of Vernon, Texas, some 40 miles west, then moved into Oklahoma and struck several small towns there. It plowed a half-mile wide path through Vernon along the eastern edge of the city, leaving death and ruin behind. Storms then developed to the west of Wichita Falls. Tornadoes were spotted to the northwest of the city, passing over open country and into Oklahoma. Just before 6 p.m., a distinctive radar echo was observed over the southwest edge of our city. No sooner than we had issued a tornado warning than one of our severe weather spotters phoned to say he had the storm in sight and that it did contain a tornado. It was then in the city, moving east and leaving a wide path of destruction. The tornado was huge in size, a true monster, some 3/4 mile wide. It stopped for nothing, tearing fine homes to splinters, reducing shopping centers to rubble, and tearing the very heart out of the south side of our town. Thousands lost their homes, hundreds were injured, and 45 died. The storm, known as a maxi tornado, or a severe right-moving storm, traveled due east for 5 miles before beginning a slow northeast swing. The total path of destruction through Wichita Falls was 8 miles long and 2 miles wide. Nothing withstood its force. It was my responsibility as a National Weather Service employee to remain on duty to provide warning to as many people in the path as I could. Although I knew my family was in the killer's path, I had to warn others as well. I received some comfort from the fact that we had a storm cellar and knew the family had been well trained. Now was the time for them to respond to their training. From the track of the storm, it was obvious that I would lose either my home or my metal detector shop I owned. Both were within a mile of the main path. If I had a choice, I silently asked God to take the shop. It could always be rebuilt. As it says in the Bible, lay not up treasures for yourself on earth. And metal detectors were only earthly treasures. Later that night, as I drove home, some 2 hours after the storm had passed, I saw the signs of destruction. First, random scattered boards and twisted pieces of roofing, then battered, twisted automobiles. The cars were scattered as if by an angry child. Only these weren't toys. They were 2,000 pounds or more autos with flesh and blood humans in them. They were on their sides, crushed against poles and against each other, battered, crushed, broken, debris laid everywhere. Fences, power lines, boards, poles, dirt, and mud covered the expressway. I drove on, numb to the destruction around me. I drove over piles of rubble 2 feet high and never cared. My big pickup never faltered, as if it knew the urgency to get home. As I approached the turn to my shop, I could see that it was the very center of destruction. Giving the shop only a passing thought, I never even paused but fought my way on through the debris. Closer to home I got, the less debris I saw. My heart began to slow its frantic race, and I almost began to breathe normally again. The house, untouched but littered with broken limbs and a few shingles. It was lighted by a soft lantern as I drove up. The children were safe. They excitedly told me about their experience through the horrid night. They told how they had huddled in the cellar and heard the frightening sounds of the tornado as it passed close by. Their mother had left immediately after the storm to try to help at the nursing home where she was employed. Once her children were safe, Barbara's loving heart swiftly turned to those aged folks in their time of need. Kim was 16, was capable of caring for the younger ones while she was gone. As I talked with the children, I suddenly realized that Tim, the eldest, was missing. Where was he? Kim thought he had gone out shopping. He was supposed to have had the day off, she thought. No one knew for sure. I had thought he was at work, safely out of the storm's path. If Kim was right, then he could have been caught in one of the shopping centers and buried in the rubble as so many others were. 30 minutes passed. I became frantic, but I had no idea where to start searching. I desperately tried to think of where to start. Then the door opened, and he walked in. Covered with mud and debris, face white as a sheet, he shakingly told us his story. It was his day to work at the print shop after all, only he was not out of the storm's path as I had thought. The storm had made a direct hit on it and totally destroyed it. Just shortly before 6 p.m., the warning was received at the print shop, and the employees began to seek shelter. Tim and 3 others drove nearly a mile toward the storm, trying to beat it to one of the men's houses to find his children. Once the man and his children were safe, Tim and the 2 remaining fellows drove back towards the plant, thinking they could outrun the oncoming storm. Tim glanced over his shoulder only to see the monstrous funnel gaining. There was no chance to outrun it. The freeway was becoming packed with cars trying to flee. Traffic was beginning to jam. He jumped the curb and ran his car under an overpass. Leaving the car to his fate, Tim dived into a culvert that was only about 18 inches in diameter. That tiny, muddy culvert saved Tim and his friends' lives. As the monster passed directly overhead, whipping dirt and debris through the culvert, sucking the boys one way and then the other. When the storm passed, they crawled out to a scene directly from the worst nightmare ever imagined. Power lines were down all around them, snapping and sparking. Cars were scattered everywhere. Tim's car had been blown about 300 yards and wrapped around a power pole. People lay in the road, bleeding and stunned. The three were trapped by live power lines with no way to escape except to walk alongside the nearby railroad tracks. They walked almost a quarter of a mile, afraid to cross to reach those injured before finding a way clear of the downed wires. The wife had still not returned, so Tim and I set out to try and find her. When we reached the nursing home, she had already left. The home had been severely damaged, but with no injuries or deaths. By the time we got home, she had returned and then left again looking for us. Eventually, we all made contact. Once again, the family was together. We were badly shaken, but all in one place. We filled every available container with water as the pressure was dropping rapidly. Candles and emergency lanterns were lit, and we began to unwind. After a rather tasteless meal, we left to see what remained of the Eckhart detector cells. The shop was so destroyed that at first we couldn't find it. Finally, we located it by locating the exit for the National Guard Armory directly across the street. Of the shop, only 2 walls were left standing. The roof and the front were gone, as well as all the interior walls. Rubble was piled in the showroom where formerly shiny new metal detectors had been. We dug through the mess and recovered only 6 detectors, a few books, and some odds and ends that had somehow survived. My new desk and anniversary present for my wife remained, as did a file cabinet, although both were badly damaged. That was all we could find. As I stood there, I suddenly thought of the manuscript for my book. It had been scheduled to go to the print shop for publication. I guess that is the end of practical treasure hunting, I thought to myself. Then Barb found it. Rain-soaked, debris-riddled, but still readable, lying on top of the file cabinet. It had been on my desk when I left the day before. Somehow, I'll get it printed. It deserves that much anyway. The total helplessness of the situation began to press in on me, but I still realized just how lucky we were. Our loss was small compared to those who lost their homes, were injured, or had lost loved ones. The more I thought, the less I felt the loss. Sure, I lost a shop and thousands of dollars of equipment, but I still had my family. I had the real treasures of this earth safe and sound around me. The next morning, as I surveyed the area, my feelings were those of total disbelief. Nothing remained. Trees, fences, small and large buildings were leveled. The formidable National Guard Armory, which had stood so bravely across the street, was nothing but a pile of broken bricks. Some order now prevailed. Ununiformed officials were able to direct traffic and recovery operations. I was able to spend the day probing the remains of my once beautiful shop, trying to recover as much as I could. I hoped to find enough to start over. In spite of the tragedy and the terrible financial loss, I came out of the experience far richer than before. I realized far better the value of family, friends, and loved ones. They are the real treasures we cannot afford to lose. Material things can be replaced, people cannot. Help began pouring in all over the nation for our storm victims. The people of Wichita Falls opened their hearts and gave freely. Sure, there were a few vultures who tried price gouging, and there was some looting. But the vast majority of our citizens did everything possible to help those who suffered. Later, after phone service was restored, we learned the deep concern of those other cities held for us and how they tried and again to contact us. Calls are still coming in. Now, as a new day dawns, a new city rises from the ruins. We, the people of Wichita Falls, find with a greater strength than ever before. We have found a brotherhood that has always been there, only buried so deeply by personal concern we thought it gone. As long as this strength and brotherhood lies within the heart of man, no force, no nation, and no evil will ever be able to conquer the American people.